Philosophy of language can be incredibly difficult because what we're aiming to do is to explain how language works while we're using language. So to try to make this subject a bit more accessible, I'm creating this deep dive series where I will try to explain key concepts within the field as simply as possible. By the way, I'm Pelle W. I'm a philosopher with a degree from Lund University, and obsess about philosophy is basically what I do every day. I will base this course on this book by William G. Lycan. I won't cover all of the contents of the book, because the aim of this series is to just give you a quick overview of the subject and some basic knowledge of the different views within the field. But if you want to go deeper, I highly recommend the book. Here is a list of various topics that I plan to cover in the upcoming weeks. I'm not sure if I will go through all of them, but this episode is the introduction, so let's get started. Have you ever wondered what actually happens in your mind when you understand a word or a sentence? For instance, have you ever read a couple of lines in a book only to discover that you actually didn't comprehend any meaning whatsoever? You performed all the mechanics of reading, yet you did not capture any meaning of what you read. Then you might start over with an intent to understand, and voila, this time something sort of magical occurred. You understood the meaning of what you read. Something more happened within your mind when you understood the meaning. This is one of the reasons why philosophy of language is deeply connected to philosophy of mind. But more about that later. The notion of meaning is central to philosophy of language. When you think about it, language is truly incredible. I am now making various sounds and noises with my mouth, and in some odd way these sounds produce meanings that you understand. But what even is meanings? First, let's make some key distinctions here. There is a big difference between what's called semantics and syntax. Generally speaking, semantics is the actual meaning of the words or sentences. So when you read without comprehension, no semantical content enters your mind. While syntax, on the other hand, is the structure, the grammar, or even just the ordering of the words. To see this distinction clearly, let's consider some sentences where they fail. Take this sentence, for instance. Number 1. Hot, I, thirsty today, am its. If I uttered this sentence, you would probably think that I am not very good at English because this sentence violates common grammatical rules. But what's interesting about this sentence is that it somehow still produces some sort of meaning here. Because you would probably hand me a soda or a glass of water if you heard this sentence, right? Even though the syntax is completely off, it still contains some kind of meaning here. You can still perfectly understand Yoda even though he uses odd structured sentences, right?
I can't. It's too big. Size matters not.
So our first sentence is syntactically incorrect, yet semantically sort of okay. But now consider this sentence. 2. If Scaligians florten, then music calliwaggers cronk. This sentence, on the other hand, is syntactically correct. It's a standard if-then sentence. So it sort of follows standard rules of English, yet it fails to provide almost any meaning at all. The words that are used just don't provide any semantical or meaningful content. So from all this, we can conclude that certain strings of words, in other words, sentences, are meaningful, others not. But that's not all. Syntax isn't just about the ordering of the words or grammar, because the semantics or meaning of different sentences change depending on the syntax, i.e. the structure. For instance, take this sentence. 3. Elizabeth loves John. The syntax of this sentence is incredibly important, right? Because if we change it just slightly to "for John loves Elizabeth," the meaning of the sentence has completely changed, even though we're using exactly the same words. 3 and 4 describes two very different scenarios. And sadly, that Elizabeth loves John does not mean that John loves Elizabeth. So the meaning of the whole sentence also depends on the syntax. This is sometimes referred to as compositionality, that the meaning of the whole sentence is derived from the meaning of the words within the sentence and the structure they consist of. The concept of compositionality is usually attributed to Gottlob Frege, a very important philosopher that we will discuss in future episodes. But this concept is truly amazing. Take this sentence, for instance. 5. Sophia, the clever cat, bribed Elon Musk with whiskey so she could fly his rocket to Mars in order for her to perform experiments with Purple Fleece, who suffers from constipation. I can almost, with 100% certainty, claim that you have never heard this sentence before, yet, given that you understand English, you fully understood it without even thinking about it. It's almost like magic. How is it possible for you to understand a completely new sentence you've never heard before, and that you probably will never hear again? With all this in mind, Lycan writes that we can conclude these 4 things. Some strings of marks or noises are meaningful sentences. Each meaningful sentence has parts that are themselves meaningful. Each meaningful sentence means something in particular. Competent speakers of a language are able to understand many of that language sentences without effort, and almost instantaneously, they also produce sentences in the same way. Now, all of these things needs to be explained, and that is where our philosophizing begins. And in the next episode, we'll discuss the simplest and most intuitive account of these facts. So what we've been discussing in this episode is what's coming up in this series on philosophy of language, the distinction between semantics and syntax. Semantics is about the meaning of the words, and syntax is about the structure of the words. Then we discussed a little bit about compositionality, that the meaning of whole sentences is not only derived from the meaning of the words that are used within the sentence, but also that the meaning depends on the structure. And then lastly, we talked about the facts of language where our philosophizing departs. In the next episode, we'll discuss the referential theory of meaning. But if you can't wait until then, I suggest you check out this episode here, which is a beginner's course into philosophy of mind. As I mentioned before, philosophy of mind is deeply intermingled with that of philosophy of language, so some basic knowledge into that field will be really helpful. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. See you guys in the next one.